Greetings YouTube and welcome to my latest weapons build. Today we're going to be working on a hatchet or a light hand axe. Kind of like, not quite battle axe, but maybe a little bit bigger than a hand axe. We'll find that out when I'm done. So what I'm going to be using for this project is this piece of blade, which was from another project. This was from my bearded axe project. So this is going to be reused. And then I'm going to use this piece of 3/4 inch square stack tubing, and this was left over from my project where I built a handle for my new toolbox. So that's also coming back, recycling some material. This is from another project. It's a piece of quarter inch 20 threaded rod. It was actually extra. I actually bought more than this than I needed for another project, so I don't really. It's a freebie. And then I got these left over from another project as well. So all of these components were in my house already, so I've had purchased nothing for this. And I'll probably be wrapping it, just for fun, with this orange kind of paracord. I mean, it's paracord in the sense that it looks like paracord. It isn't. It's hollow. It has no internals. But which means it's going to give me a flatter look, so I think that might be nice. It's going to be less rounded, it'll be a little more flat. I think that'll be a nice visual appeal, and that'll be the handle, the grip. So to prepare this, what I want to do is I want to nip this off. I want to keep this. I want to actually accentuate that hook to make it a little bit bigger. So take this a little bit off. And then I'm going to bring this in just a little bit to square it up just a smidge. And I'm not going to do much about this other than making sure that it's not egregiously not straight, because I'm actually going to go here to create a cleaner look. And what do I mean by that? It's somewhat ironic, seeing as this is a post-apocalyptic theme build. But instead of doing a full slit in the tubing, I'm only going to put a slit in one side, and I'm going to butt this inside the inside of against this tube, and I'm going to set it up so that the slot I make will accompany just this point. So this whole piece here is going to be inside, acting as a physical barrier preventing it from moving at all. It's going to be sitting on that point, and going to drill 2 holes. I'll figure out where they're going to be after I figure out where the slot and how the blade sits in there. I'm happy with. And again, they'll be 1/4 inch. And then I'll drill 2 holes in this to go along with those. And it's going to have a open split. So this end will be open. This will just have a round hole as a relief spot, a stop spot for the slot. And between squeezing it here and then having this and having the 2 through bolts, I think it will be all secure enough when I'm finished. Because if I do a full slit, I pinch the entire process, and that gives me a lot of force. But I'm only going to be doing a slot on one side. I'll get some pinching here, but I'm not going to get any pinching done on this end. So I'm going to try to make that slot just wide enough to accept this blade, and no wider. But I think it's going to give me a nice look. So this overall will become a little bit smaller before I'm done, because again I'm going to nip this off, and I'm going to bring this in a little bit because it's not quite as square as I want it to be. So you're probably going to end up about there when I'm finished. So we're probably going to lose about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more on that end before I'm finished. I may just grind that off. I don't think I'm going to use an angle grinder and a cutoff wheel on that. I mean, just grind this point off and that off, because and then use a flap wheel to deburr it. I'll be deburring this just because it means that I won't have to worry about burrs getting in my way when I'm trying to fit the blade into the inside of the shaft. And I'm thinking of actually going to sharpen this. I don't normally sharpen. In fact, I've never sharpened an axe made from a saw blade before. But I thought I'd just do it for fun. So when I've got everything fitted, everything's shaped and drilled and all that horse bucky, then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grind a bevel on this. Not super sharp, because I can't. It's never going to really hold an edge. But I'd like to give the edge more of a bevel, like axe shaped, than the straight, which it is right now. In fact, because this is a saw blade, these points actually flare slightly this way and slightly that way, so they do have a canter. I'll be grinding that canter off so that there is less of a kerf. If you know what KERF, if you know what the kerf of a saw blade is, that's the amount of material it takes out of an object it's cutting, whether it's wood or metal. So that you have to factor the kerf in, say if you're making multiple cuts in a board or a rod or something. Say if you want to cut something into 12 pieces, you have to factor that kerf in, otherwise you're not going to get as many pieces out of that length as you think you're going to if you don't factor that kerf in too. I know this because I used to work in a place that made antennas, and cutting aluminum rods to make antenna elements was something I did every day. And I had to calculate the kerf so I would get the exact number of pieces, how many pieces I would get per length in an automatic cutoff saw. And I had to make sure I had enough material left that would still be held in the vise before the saw blades would come down and cut it. Otherwise, you would have pieces of aluminum rod flying everywhere like shrapnel. So yeah, it was very important that I made sure I had the right number of pieces per length. So factoring in your kerf is less important for many things, but it's still important if you're going to be making multiple cuts in a board or something. So if you ever have to do that, make sure you factor in the kerf of your blade, how much it removes, and it isn't the width of the blade. You also have to take into account that the edges on a saw blade are going to be wider than the blade itself. That's a good thing. That means your saw blade is less likely to bind. So yeah, so the first thing I'm going to do is clean up this. Get the blade in the shape I want it to be in, deburred and everything. And when that's done, then I can start the layout here. Then it's going to be drilling. I'll need 2 holes for the through holes, 1 hole for the relief hole at the bottom of the slot, and then it will be laying out the slot and making the slot. After that, it will be drilling this, because then I can set it in there and get exactly the location for the holes. Because again, I've always found it easier to make one thing match another thing, as opposed to trying to calculate it all with measurements, because you get very frustrated. So do one thing, then try to make the other thing match the first thing. I find it far easier, less stressful, makes my projects go faster, and they're a lot more enjoyable. Okay, so playing with this first. I've cleaned the blade up, and I've got the first hole in my shaft. So now I'm going to need to cut a single slot through one side along that black line, which will be the slot for the blade. And once I get everything set up for that, and I can fit the blade in there, then I can finally decide where I exactly want the 2 holes for the 2 through bolts to go, because part of it's mechanical and part of it is aesthetic. So I want to know how that all looks to my eye when I'm done. So I'm going to be cutting on this side of that black line, so I can keep an eye on it and try to get that as clean as I can. And I got a nice new blade in my cutoff wheel, in my angle grinder for that purpose, because I want to get as clean and as easy a cut as possible. I can make some of the older ones do the job, but they aren't as tidy. I want this to be a nice tidy cut. Here we have a dry fit, so there's nothing holding in there at the moment except the pressure of the slot being applied to the blade, and I like the way that looks. The back is nice and clean. It's currently sitting square against this surface on the inside, so that's cool. So now I'm going to lay out where I want the 2 holes to be, and I'm thinking probably put one there and one there. I'll get some actual measurements for that, but at the moment that's kind of where I think I'm going to put them. Maybe I'll go an inch down and then go to 4 inches. We'll see how that looks. Because there's enough beef in there. Because this tip's actually all the way down to there. So there's enough metal in there, that's not a problem. So make those marks, and what I may do is I may drill debating if I want to drill all the way through this thing at once. I mean, I have to use my high-speed drill bit, but my high-speed drill bit's going to cut through this square stack tubing like, a hot knife through butter. But that way I don't have to do any additional layout lines. I just clamp the whole damn thing together. If I clamp it here, it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah, that may save me a bunch of time, a bunch of trouble laying stuff out. I only got to lay it out once and just go right on through. That could work. Alrighty, we're going to give that a shot and see what happens. You know, it might solve me some problems and speed the process up. So, lay out some lines and start drilling. You know that clever idea I had about drilling all the way through this? Well, I forgot something very important, that the blade was only being supported on one side. So as soon as the drill bit hit it, the blade started going. But I was able to use the drill bit to at least leave my marks on there. So now I don't have to do any layout. The marks are exactly where I want them. So now put the drill bit back in there now that I've finished drilling these holes, and now I can drill those out. So yeah, clever idea. Forgot that it wasn't being supported, and I didn't plan for it, because if I had the right kind of gauges and everything and the right kind of blocking, I probably could have done that, but I don't really have the right kind of blocking spacers, you know, to keep that perfectly level while I'm trying to drill a hole from the other side. So yeah, so it's going to drill it like this. So the blade is drilled and the shaft is drilled, and so now I just need to cut some lengths of the threaded rod, and we are good to go. Now it's time for final assembly. Remember when I said final assembly? I forgot to sharpen the edge of the axe. Well, I've done that. So the edge of the axe is not sharp. So it's got lots of nasty little points, and they came out quite nice. I quite like how that looks. And I've wrapped the handle. So this is now a completed project. Quite happy with this. So now it's going to take time to take it outside, get some pictures for both this video and for my DeviantArt and Instagram feeds. And if you don't follow them, you should, because my DeviantArt is where the stills will permanently live of all my weapons projects. And my Instagram not only has some of the things I've built, but it also where I find my scrap occasionally. Like I will take pictures of stuff when I've lucked into finds and things like that, and as well as cute cat pictures. In fact, I'll be posting one later today. Alright, so thank you for being here for this weapons build. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will be here for the next.